You're all set.
Okay. So we have a quorum, and technologically we're all set and we're ready to begin
Can
tonight.
you make yours louder?
Me? I don't know. Maybe. Did that help? Did that help, Stacy?
Can you try again? Okay.
Stacy, don't hit your computer.
What?
Don't hit your computer.
No, I have this new webcam and I can't figure out, I can't hear you guys. So Kristen in the other room has her volume on high.
It might, I mean, I can hear Jude fine. So is it possibly your volume you got to turn up? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
yeah, because I hear her fine.
Yeah, I have my volume on 84.
Okay. All right. So are we ready now?
I'm ready.
Okay. So earlier today, Fillmore sent an email asking if I would chair tonight's meeting if Penny and Jean weren't able to make it, and I said I was fine if that was okay with the board.
I'm fine.
Is that okay? Is that okay with? Okay.
Yes.
Not hearing any objections, we'll go ahead. All right. So this is the Madison Board of Finance meeting, June 17, 2020. And it's a regular session, and we'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. So, ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of
of
the
the
United States
of
of America,
America, and to the republic for which it stands,
which stands
one nation,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you, Fillmore. So the first item under the regular session that we have is to approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 Board of Finance meeting. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Then let's have a vote to approve the minutes.
So,
Yep.
so move. Aye.
All right, are there any objections? Any nays? So the minutes are approved unanimously. Item 3 under regular session is chairman's comments. There aren't any tonight that I'm aware of. And under 4, citizens and finance member comments. Let's go with our citizens' comments first.
At this time, any citizen that would like to make comment can raise their hand and I will promote you to speak. There is no one raising their hand, Jude, so I think you can go ahead.
Okay. Are there any comments by the board finance members?
Yes, Madam Acting Chair, I'd like to ask you to open the agenda to add a 14A liaison reports, because I have a couple of liaison reports that I think would be of interest to the board.
Okay. Hang on 1 minute. There's no item down here further for liaison reports. Okay.
That's why I'm saying add it to 14A.
All right. That sounds, do we have a motion to, well, you just, do we have a second to open the agenda to add item 14A for liaison reports?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, then let's vote. All those in favor of opening the agenda to add an item 14A to have a discussion on liaison reports, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion to open the agenda passes. And Lauren, do we now actually have to vote on putting that 14A in there? Because that was just opening the agenda?
I think I made it a two statement motion.
Yep. So you motioned to open the agenda and add that item. So you're all set.
Same time. Okay. All right, then let's go on with the, under our business section, we have an item there, citizens' comments, which we actually is a repeat of number 4. So again, if there are no citizens' comments, then we'll just go on to item 6. And I'll also say at the end of the meeting, there's another opportunity for citizens' comments. So item number 6 is discuss and take action to approve funding from the planning reserve not to exceed $10,000 to hire Thomas A. Stevens and Associates, Inc. to conduct a septic feasibility study of the Island Avenue School.
And just before you start this, Jude, I just promoted Peggy and also Graham Curtis, who is the chairman of the ad hoc Island Avenue School Future Use Committee, to talk to this item.
That's good timing. All right. Let's get that screen back up there. Okay, so I'm opening that item up for discussion right now. So Graham, thank you for coming to the meeting tonight. I understand this is something that you'd like to speak on.
Yes, thank you. I don't know how much detail, if anybody saw the presentation to the Board of Selectmen on the 8th. Our charge is to investigate possible alternate uses for the property, with the exception of a public school. One of the possible uses is a multifamily development for sale. That's largely driven by the septic capacity of the property. So we've solicited 3 proposals to proceed doing a study on that. Stevens had done the work before for the school, 90s, so he was a logical choice. So we solicited 3 proposals, and we'd like to move forward on that. There's a lot of other issues, but that's kind of step 1 for us to either rule that in or rule that out as a possible use. So that's the short version. I don't know if you want to have the whole. Peggy could probably go into more detail on the deed and the use, but I think you probably are familiar with, most of you are familiar with the story.
Right. I think right now we're just concerned, the issue before us has to do with the $10,000 septic feasibility study. Of course, you can ask whatever questions you want, but Justin, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had, I guess, 2 questions. One, I'm sure this is the case, but the way the proposal reads, it's a feasibility for 25 units. I assume his feasibility, if it's not 25 units, he will tell us how many it can support, or is it kind of a all or none?
No, correct. That's kind of a maximum. That's the logical. Before you get into beyond that, you get into different. That's why it's set at 25 max.
Okay. And the other question, I apologize, I didn't hear the presentation at the Board of Selectmen meeting, but I just happened to stumble on the article in the paper this week. And I just want, for my own sake, regarding the deed, I know there's like a right of first refusal back to the original family, and there was a preclusion against other like commercial and industrial uses. But I thought, which that article mentioned, but I thought I was under the impression that the restriction on other uses was removed somewhere along the line. Is that not correct?
No.
No,
It's still there.
yeah, it's still there.
Correct.
Okay.
And we've actually been talking to town council about how to resolve the deed restrictions. And we had, actually, Graham and I had a call with the council this week to get some cost estimates and just what process that would be to undertake and do that.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully within 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have a pretty good handle on who the heirs are. Peggy, were you able to talk to the person who knew the family?
Not yet, no. I got to reach out, and you just reminded me because we had that call yesterday. But yeah, there is somebody in town that might have some helpful connections, but we've also will be retaining an air search company, a research company that that the council has recommended. I think the cost was like $2,500 or something. So we're going to try to put together all the information, because if anything that we do is going to have to be documented, obviously, if we go to an individual to state that they're the appropriate heir, because it's not clear. It's definitely not a clear line of succession in terms of the information that we have. So, but we're hoping that we can get this resolved. And if we can't, you know, we would have to go through a court process that is gray, so to speak, but we think that we can still be successful. And we're also getting advice in terms of like how the title companies would treat this as well if we went through a RFP process on this. So we're getting all those things cleared up as quickly as we can.
I have a question about the contract with Stevens and Associates. So I understand it went through the bidding process. I also saw that Stevens and Associate is a Madison company, which is great. Love to have create business in our town. But did it also, when it went before the Board of Selectmen, or before going to the Board of Selectmen, was there any kind of a screen that went through it just to make sure that there isn't any kind of appearance of impropriety insofar as whether this Stevens and Associates has any connection with anyone on the committee or anyone who has any of the discretion in voting on any of these issues? Do we know that?
We do not have a process in place currently that requires any kind of disclosure or, disclosure agreement for that, for the ad hoc committee, but I think it's a good point to raise. I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of trying to put better processes in place. So I guess we could ask Graham, who solicited the bids. Did you have that discussion with any of the 3 companies that put the bids in about any conflicts of interest?
I'm not aware of anybody having any, prior relationship, with any of the consultants. I mean, Stevens did the previous work, so he was the logical one. Then I asked people in town who would be other people you'd recommend, and the other people I got, that's the names I got. I talked to the sanitarian, town engineer, things like that. So I tried to get a apples to apples, finish. And Stevens was they're all recommended highly, but Stevens being local, I thought it made a lot of sense too. And having history of the job.
Okay.
And I think that
and he is my nephew, so it's
he's doing a good job with that company I own. So
well, and I would point out that actually from a policy standpoint, I think that anything under $10,000, you don't have to get 3 bids, but we just wanted to be, given this is a public committee and everything, we wanted to be assured of that. And the fact that the proposal, I think, has the opportunity to slightly go to 10,000. I think it's under 10. Is that correct, Stacey?
Yes.
Is right. Yeah. Yeah. So we're kind of at the margins here. We kind of thought it was better to just go through the approval process, just because it is dealing with obviously a very sensitive issue in town. But you raise, something, I think going forward, we still need to kind of think through and make sure that we have documentation to support a lot of this, because I don't think historically we've always done that, and it's a good thought to go forward to just make sure that we get those things done, especially this dealing with a public asset that we would be possibly going through a sale process for. So
yeah, the RFP process is going to need a lot more oversight. The actual, if we're developing the RFP, is going to be fairly complicated depending how we structure it.
Just as a point of I don't know, order or clarification, I'm not sure that the Board of Finance needs to weigh in so much on who was selected. I think our main job is to declare that yes, using $10,000 out of that planning reserve in order to get a septic study done of the Allen Avenue property is a worthwhile expenditure of the funds. I'm not sure we need to weigh in on the whys and wherefores of picking Stevens or somebody else. That's what these other people get the big bucks for.
yeah, there have been discussions in the past couple of years, Phil Moore, about other contracts that the town was getting into or thought they might want to get into, and that it's been raised as part of the due diligence. The position has been raised that by some members that part of the due diligence of the Board of Finance and spending the town's money and recommending that this is a good use of the town's money is to make sure that issues like the one I just raised was addressed.
Mhm.
So there's that's all. And I think that just to make sure that everything, not only is that, as we know, it's going to be above board, but that it doesn't even have the appearance of impropriety, especially when it involves large assets like of the towns like this one. So is there any more discussion? Okay, so all of those in favor of approving funding from the planning reserves of an amount not to exceed $10,000 to hire Thomas A. Stevens and Associates to conduct a septic feasibility study of the Island Avenue schools, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All of those who,
I'm abstaining, Jude.
yes,
Okay.
John Picard is
Thank you.
abstaining from this discussion and the vote. And all of those who oppose.
Does that nullify our quorum if John's abstaining?
Doesn't nullify a quorum, I abstain. I know about the vote, but it doesn't nullify a quorum.
Right.
Okay, yep.
So anybody opposing, say nay. So I think the vote passes 3 in favor and 1 abstention.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you, Curtis. Graham.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is item number 7, discuss and take action to approve accepting a grant in the amount of $5,000 from the Irwin C. Bauer Charitable Trust to be used for habitat exploration programs and interpretive.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Fillmore seconds. Discussion?
I've invited Scott Erskine into the discussion as well, so he can answer any questions that you may have.
I don't think we have it.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
Scott? Is this a grant that this trust awards to the town every year? Or is this a new?
We have been very fortunate to receive it ever since the trust was formed. And they have changed their setup as far as the grant allotment, and we received the maximum amount of what they are allocating out per grant.
Yeah, they just so for the board's benefit, I'm sure Fillmore remembers this, but as for select person, I sit on this now, the Board of Trustees. And so I had my first meeting in April when we went through all the grant applications. And there is, more maybe professionalized management of this now that kind of was brought in, I guess, 3 years ago. And so they're kind of changing a little bit the focus, not necessarily the focus, but they're trying to broaden their reach. And the town is fortunate because we continue to receive money for this to fund these programs. But I know that there was, I think we got larger amounts in previous years, didn't we, Scott?
Yes, until they're restructuring,
Yeah.
we were up into the double digits as far as thousands, almost 25,000. But they are trying to reorganize for scholarships to promote agricultural uses and endeavors through the trust.
And they also are trying to have a more of expanded community component. So it was kind of, they did offer grants to other things in town that, to broaden out their reach. But the town fortunately is still receiving the $5,000. I know there was some confusion last year in this, right? Because these are the Bauer Park, some of these are run through the Bauer Park programming, right? The habitat exploration, it's the person who runs that.
It's through the recreation department.
Right, right.
We
So,
hire the instructors and
so, yeah, so go ahead, Scott.
we pay not only through program use fees, but we also tap into the grant. If we don't meet a minimum that we're really close, we'll draw from the grant to help the program survive and let it go.
And so I think what this year now, those programs offered at Bauer Park are now going to be self-sustaining, whereas before they were partially subsidized by the grant. And
Correct.
And this $5,000 will go. This is for the school system, then, right? Through the programs. Oh no, this is not.
No, this is purely town fund
that's
programs.
town funding. So it's just so you're aware that we've been fortunate to benefit from this. I think over the last number of years, but you know, it has been slowly going down every year, and I think we can anticipate that it would be more at this level going forward. Because I don't know if Fillmore, you were probably involved when some of the early grants were here to subsidize programs. So,
I was, and I've lost track, of course, over the last several years as to what they're doing. Just as a side, I sat in on I'm the liaison to the library board, which met a couple of nights ago, and they also got a grant, but it was much less than what they had asked for. And they were a little surprised at that. And they were speaking to the change of management, I guess, that you referred to, Peggy. Can you recall offhand that how much the total is that they're giving out?
I'm trying to remember. It was significantly. What happened is that before this was kind of managed, I think through a professional trustee, they were perhaps giving out more than they should have been giving if they want to sustain this over the long run. So about 2 years ago, they reduced the total grant amount, and they've maintained their scholarship portion of that. And then they've allotted another portion to go out to different organizations, including the library had requested. I think Charlotte Everett's also got a grant. I don't think anybody got the total amount that they were asking for. So the library was treated similarly to, I think, every other group that has asked for the funding. I'm trying to remember the total, because this was probably in April. We had this board meeting, I think. And it was, I want to say like $50,000. So they're paring down quite a bit. And I think historically it was probably double that they had to offer out. And so they're trying to get themselves on a better schedule so that they can be right-sized going forward and continue to sustain the trust. So, but I know a lot of groups were probably disappointed. There was a few new groups in there also that did receive money, but nobody, as far as I remember, got the full ask amount that they had asked. And the town certainly didn't get the full ask either. Right. Or did we? Did we ask for 5? I don't remember. We did. We asked for 10. Yeah.
No, the full amount, their max.
It's 5 now. That's right.
Is 5,000 now. So we got the full amount. So.
Okay. And we asked for the 5, but there were other requests that might have been asking for like $3,000 and they got 500 or something like that. So it's tough. And then I think also they recognize this was during COVID, you know, there was a concern, the market, obviously we're in kind of free fall at the time that this discussion was going on too. So they were trying to be as conservative as possible.
Yeah.
So does this amount cover the program or does it need to be augmented?
It's Justin, it's a supplemental grant. So we can try to make programs run that all of our programs in town have to meet a minimum number. And this will allow us, if say we have a minimum of 10 people in a class and we're at 8, we can use the grant to supplement those fees in order to pay the instructors and let the program go.
Got it. So they're designed to support themselves, and this can
Correct.
help cover any shortfall.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All right, then all those in favor of
Aye.
accepting the grant, say aye.
Aye.
And with our thanks from the town to the Bauer people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fillmore. Any opposed? None opposed. So that item passes. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Okay, item 8, discuss and take action to approve the transfer of property taxes to suspense based on recommendation from the tax collector. So I'm opening this up for discussion.
Let's make a motion so we can discuss it. I'll make the motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second?
All right, good.
All right, do we have someone here to talk about this?
I just moved Colleen over. She is a tax collector, so she's on as a panelist now.
Okay. So Colleen, would you walk us through this, please?
Sure. This is really just a formality. Based on the recommendation of the auditors, and by statute, it's recommended that you transfer at least once a year items that you feel are no longer collectible. So we transfer this to suspense, but this still does mean that we can collect on them. It just removes it as an asset from the town.
Oh, okay. And how long do we keep it in suspense?
Well, taxes are collectible for 15 years.
For 15 years. And I was just wondering, how do you make the decision that they're uncollectible?
Usually, there's a lot of invalid addresses, accounts that, you send out tax bills all the time, on a rotating basis, and you do everything you can to attempt to collect, but if, they're just transferred to suspense so that it kind of puts it in a holding spot. And like I said, we could still collect on those.
Colin, I noticed that on the list that you provided, I guess you're asking to move 37 grand over. It's personal property and motor vehicles. There's no real property in there.
That's
So-
correct.
But
Right.
if it's real property, you could speak to a judge and take it.
That's
But-
correct. Yeah,
but-
the only real time that you would see real estate recommended for to be put into suspense is if, and we do have two accounts. One is, they're both owner unknowns, so we really don't have any way to collect these small parcels. So usually those two, in the past, they have been put into suspense. But other than that, no, that's correct. You would foreclose on those.
It's actually 78, Fillmore, because I guess there's some from 16 and some from 15. There's two batches.
That's correct. The 2016 grand list has 34,948, and the 2015 grand list has 37,820.
Oh, okay.
So do we do anything different? Like, I don't know, like private debt, do you turn them over to a debt collector, or do you just continue to mail or whatever you do normally?
We handle them in-house. In the past, we have used a marshal. We've found that handling inside, we do just as well. So that's what we've been continuing to do. For real estate, we do use an attorney to handle our foreclosures, but other than that, we handle them in-house.
Okay,
Is there any other discussion? All right, then let's move this to, let's go to the vote, and all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Colleen.
Thank you.
thanks, Colleen.
the item on the agenda. I can get out of this. All right, I've lost my agenda. So can someone read item 9 off of the agenda for me?
Sure.
Sure,
It's-
discuss.
uh,
Go ahead, Justin, go ahead.
It's the garbage removal. So number 9, discuss and take action to approve awarding the 5-year contract for the collection of facilities, refuse, and recycling for town and Board of Education facilities and containers to Hometown Waste LLC, also known as Schweitzer Waste Removal.
Okay.
Is that a form of a motion, Justin?
A motion to open, to approve and open for discussion?
Second.
I'm sorry, I thought this item was going to be removed from the agenda
Why?
Well,
because it is no longer a 5-year contract. I thought Peggy was going to address this, or
Oh, okay.
I withdraw my second.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So just to give you quickly, there was a little confusion when this came up at the Board of Selectmen because we didn't have the actual contract and we just didn't have, Billy couldn't be on the call at that point. So we wanted to table it for our next meeting. And as we dug into it, really, this is a 1-year contract and we were unwilling to commit to a 5-year contract just because there was a significant rate hike in the contract. So now we're going to look at it as a 1-year deal and just bring it to the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Finance does not need to take action on a 1-year contract.
Okay. I was wondering why we were going 5 years anyway, so that's.
Yeah, it was a little, there's like a whole fee scale, but it's really renewable every year anyway. So we just we didn't have the details at our meeting. And so today we kind of dug into it a little bit more and talked to Scott Erskine and realized that really this is just a 1-year deal. And we're going to have to find, I think, a better situation for this because it kind of surprised us, the cost on this. But we'll take this up at our board in terms of a 1-year contract for now. So
That works out in your favor. You put it out to bid and see what happens. I withdraw my second. So if Justin withdraws his motion, I think we're good.
I hope I still get paid for reading it, though.
Oh, yeah, you got extra points for that, Justin. You did a great job, by the way.
You did. Okay. They're withdrawn. Justin, it's withdrawn? Your motion?
Withdrawn. Motion withdrawn.
Okay. And the second withdrawn. Okay, so then on to item 10, and I did find my agenda again. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Facilities Department in the amount of $25,000 to replace a 2005 Chevy Equinox. Do we have a motion to approve this
Sure.
and to discuss?
I remember this. I'll make the motion. Good.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. And I think, is Billy here to talk about, Scott? Okay, and Bill, okay.
Did we have some comments on this during the budget process, or is this something else?
Excuse me. Would you like me to speak on it?
Well,
Yeah, Billy.
John, did you just ask a question?
No, go ahead. Let him speak. Go ahead. That's fine.
All right.
Sure. This is the vehicle that I drive. It's 15 years old, the one I was driving. It was slated to be replaced in a year from now. It was in great shape, but the engine, after 15 years and 90,000 miles, failed. And it just didn't make sense to put the kind of money in that would take for a 15-year-old car to be replaced. The engine was gone. It just didn't make any sense. So the funds weren't available. So we're asking for the funds to be available so I can replace the car. It lasted 15 years. I expect it to last another 15 years. It was in good shape other than the engine. We didn't expect it to fail. We expect it to last a couple more years.
It failed with only 90,000 miles on it?
Yeah, it was 15 years old and, it was unexpected. They tore it apart and they told me it was going to cost almost $8,000 to fix. It didn't make any sense to me with a, 15-year-old car to spend, almost $8,000 on it. So I asked where the funding would be to replace it. And we came up with this program because there's no funds in the account to cover for the new car.
Was this part of the CIP, Bill?
Yes, it was in the CIP, and it was slated to be replaced, I believe, 21, 22, which made sense because it only had 90,000 miles on it. It is in really good shape other than the engine. So, you know, it was well taken care of car, and it just failed. It doesn't make sense to myself, John Anako, and I. We discussed it at length. You know, it failed in May. You know, at the end of May, you know, we did get it looked at. We looked at alternatives. You know, we decided that this was the best way to go, ask for the funding and just get the new car. Before we had scheduled it, you know, it was scheduled for 2 years out. It wouldn't have been till the next fiscal year, or the fiscal year after that.
Right, and
So how much are you spending on the new car? How much are you spending on the new car? Is it
25.
total?
So we're looking at a small SUV. The requirements are white, four-wheel drive. We're looking at an Escape. We looked at a Jeep Compass and a Nissan Rogue. It's that kind of car. $25,000 is our budget. I got 3 prices. They're all 23, 21 range. The Board of Selectmen asked that I consider buying it so I could get it locally serviced. The Compass is $200 more than the Ford Nissan. So the Jeep Compass is what we're going to select if it's still available when we have the funding in place.
So basically you're saying 23 versus 8, probably better gas miles in a car that's not 15 years old anymore. Does that summarize where we are?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a technical question. Maybe this is for Stacy. This replacement was in the CIP program for, as Bill said, for a year or two out. Can't we just, instead of having a special appropriation, can't we just rejuggle the replacement schedule?
You got cut out a little bit.
So the funding, let me answer that, Stacy. The funding wasn't available to cover the cost, Fillmore. That's one of the things we looked at. That's why we're asking for the special appropriation. We couldn't juggle the money. There was no funds in the account to cover the cost.
for this year, because we're at the end of the year.
2022.
Yeah.
Well, I think where Fillmore was going, or maybe now we can speak, but just moving it within the CIP.
Yeah,
The problem is it's a projected balance at the end of the fiscal year will not support a purchase of another vehicle. It won't even support a lease payment for the other vehicle. So our thought was, is we can purchase this one, get that off the schedule for year 2 of the program, and we can move other items up per the plan that's in CIP. So there is no balance in the highway equipment fund to purchase a vehicle at this point.
It's the end of the fiscal year, so I think if this was January, we might have the ability to do that, but it's, you know, how much is left in that account? There's like, you said,
Even
like,
so,
yeah,
even so, after the end of this next fiscal year, we wouldn't have the funds. So if we did do a lease and defer the first lease payment to the end of next fiscal year, we still wouldn't have enough as far as the way the program is set up right now.
and I will say that one of the big discussions in CIP on all vehicles, there was this recurring cry out for a vehicle study that I guess had been promised in previous years. And we actually are in the process of getting that done. And Public Works Director has gone through and actually put up a whole new recommended schedule. He's put all this information together because basically this is based off of, I think, an internal review of all assets done years ago, right? Stacy, they came up with this kind of schedule. Right. And unfortunately, that's like with the truck that was approved in February, I think we did, or, you know, where we had another Public Works truck. It was quite a big dollar amount. You know, just couldn't sustain itself. It wasn't, you know, so maybe we're estimating how long these things should last. I mean, should we really be having things in for 15 years on a 15-year replacement cycle for a normal passenger car? So those are the types of things that we're going to review. And there might be, you know, some advice that comes out of that about how we manage all the vehicles in CIP going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So before you make your final motion, if you can decide if you want to take this from fund balance or the contingency, I believe contingency has a little over 40,000 right now. So we certainly can take a special appropriation out of the contingency fund.
I would suggest taking out a contingency. We've only got 2 weeks left and
I agree. We should have made that in the motion, though.
Yeah. Do you want to restate the motion? Withdraw your first motion and restate the new one?
I don't know who made the second. If they withdraw it, we can restate it. I'll withdraw it. I think I made the motion, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whoever made the second, they withdraw it.
Special appropriation, it's just where we're taking the funds out of.
Amend the motion then, right? Can you just amend it?
You can amend it. You could amend it, then you got to vote on the amendment. So it does make much difference.
Why don't you go ahead and amend it so we can vote on it?
All right. So discuss and take action to approve the special appropriation from the facilities department amount of $25,000 to come from contingency to replace the 2005 Chevy Equinox. And I offer that as an amendment.
Is there a
Out of
second?
contingency.
Yeah, he said that. Is there a second?
sure.
Fillmore seconded it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No one's opposed, so it passes. All right. So the next item is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from Police Services in the amount of $32,478 to defund special duty wages.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
All right. Chief Drum is no longer here to discuss this. So I don't.
Yeah, they had that accident.
Right.
I can give you a little background on it if you'd like.
Yes. That
Okay.
would be- All right.
So this is the special duty overtime account where we, I'm sorry, hang on, I'm echoing. Okay. Where we fund if somebody hires a PD or an officer to pretty much supervise or be on site when they're doing a job in town. So not only do we have an expenditure budget for this, we also have revenue because we bill out as well. So it is budget neutral. We're asking for an increase of 32,000 this year, which would be a special appropriation. But if you look at the revenue, we're over our budgeted revenue of about 52,000. So it's more than, it's better than budget neutral. We actually have excess revenue. So we're also,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, that was my question. So we're actually making money. I mean, we're doing better than break even on it.
Yes. We
Good
do
job
charge
collecting.
some additional costs, administrative costs, when we do bill out the vendor for this overtime coverage. So we do have a little bit of excess revenue.
Oh, that's good. Great job.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. That motion carries. All right, moving along to number 12. We need a motion to discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $140,000 for COVID-19 related expenses. Anybody
So
want to?
moved.
Do we have a second? So we can discuss. Justin seconded to that. All right. So is this you, Peggy?
I think I could probably start it and Peggy can chime in if that's okay.
Good.
I did send out, after the Board of Selectmen voted on this item, I did send out to both the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, details of what the COVID expenditures has been through, up to date. So we're at about 134,000 actual expenditures. We left a little bit of a buffer there to get us through June 30th. We think we'll be fine with 140,000. I do have further, the detail I can send out again, but basically it included cleaning of town facilities. It included all PPE, masks, and anything like that with wipes and disinfectants. It also included food for the senior center, as well as renting a trailer to store some food, and it also included some Zoom licenses. So there's a bunch of expenditures in there, and like I said, as of right now, we're at about 134,000. Our hope is we're going to get 100% reimbursement for these items. It takes a while for FEMA to get us the money. You know, this is a unique year. We don't know what the time frame is going to be. Hopefully it'll be a lot quicker than past state of emergencies reimbursement. But what we've heard is FEMA will be reimbursing us 75% as normal. However, OPM now has said they will cover the 20% that FEMA will not cover. So when we get it is unknown, but the hope is we will get 100% reimbursement for these expenditures.
So Stacy, just to know the schedule, you mentioned 134. The thing we received from Lauren is it shows like a balance of 116. Is that the same schedule? Maybe just not fully
Yeah,
updated?
so on
or?
that schedule, that did not include about 19,000 of requisitions that were not turned into purchase orders yet. So
Okay,
if you
so
take
this is
that
the schedule.
116 plus 19,000, you get to the 134.
Yeah, and there's still stuff trickling in too, obviously, because we're still kind of we're still dealing with it and incurring expenses with it.
And do we know like how the state or the federal is going to view these? Or are we pretty certain they're going to view them as COVID? Or is there any kind of, you know, criteria that they have to approve?
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping that they're going to reimburse us for all of these expenditures. The difference between this and any other federal emergency is it's ongoing and we don't have an end date. You know, when you have a blizzard or a hurricane, you're done and you have to file your request for reimbursement within 30 to 60 days. This is ongoing. We're now told that we can do it quarterly. So we actually did just file our first FEMA quarterly reimbursement yesterday, and today FEMA reached out to us and said, no, it's changing, do it through June 30th. So now we have to change our reimbursement. So I think we're all learning in this process, but we're right on. We put in our application, we're ready to go, and we're going to revise that submission. And then as far as OPM to reimburse us for the additional 25%, that comes after the fact. So we have to exhaust all of our other revenue streams before we file with the state to get the additional amount.
And we've been generally reaching up and asking about certain costs as well to see if it would qualify. I know the governor's OPM has been issuing what they think is considered qualified expenditures. And this has probably been on a million webinars about this. I know. Yeah. So they have tried to, because, you know, this could be such a wide net that you could attribute to COVID. I think we've just been generally conservative about what we're attributing to it. And from day one, Stacy and Sam and the team here has been, you know, they're experienced in obviously having to track these types of things, and an account was set up, and we've been pretty diligent about making sure everything gets attributed appropriately to the specific issue. So
I thank you. Good.
All right, John, were you asking a question?
No, I was going to make, I mean, you incur the expenses. It's something to keep our residents and our workers safe and do all the due diligence. So I really believe FEMA will I'm sure Stacy and the first selectwoman will be diligent in getting the reimbursement. I do think OPM will take a while, but it's something we had to do. So that's all.
Well, I'll echo part of what John says. It's something we have to do and do it, but I would counsel Peggy to hold your breath until you get that money. See how long you can hold your breath.
I think it'll take a while. I agree with Fillmore, especially OPM, and they're going to wait till they get reimbursed from the federal government before you get it. But you know, I think we had to do it, and you know, and I think we should be very diligent, which you already are, about getting reimbursed. I am sure a lot of towns, Fillmore, you know, are going to have a very wide margin of what they try to get reimbursed.
Yeah, some people, some towns do try to maybe stretch the truth a little bit.
Stretch it a little bit, yeah.
But also, I don't have a very high opinion of FEMA and their sending money in either. So let's wait till the check comes.
Agreed. But we had to do it.
And thankfully, Sam and his team really gave us a heads up, got us all the forms. I think we're ahead of the game. I think we're probably one of the first few who actually tried to file an application and then we're told, hold off, things are changing. So I agree with you, Fillmore. I mean, I know in the past it's taken a year or two to get reimbursed, but this is different. Hopefully, I have high hopes that things will move a little bit quicker.
Yeah, don't do what Fillmore said. Don't hold your breath, though.
Well, and not only does it take a year or two, but then they shortchange you also.
And if you're not diligent, you won't get even less, but you will be. So
They'll say something like, "Well, gee, you could have cleaned those plastic gloves and used them 5 times."
All right.
To that effect.
Well, we'll see in 2 years, and I might not be here in 2 years, so I don't have to worry about it.
I'm sure you'll get the money back. All right.
So let's vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next one, discuss and take action to approve line item transfers totaling $287,824.92. Do we have a motion to discuss and take action on this item?
So
Hang
moved.
on 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Peggy, are we increasing that for that $2,900? Should I give them a revised amount before they make the motion?
Yeah, that was yeah, you would be adding an additional $2,900.
Yeah, so if I can just revise the total and then we could discuss the difference, but the new
Where to
total,
where?
290,724.92.
So do we have a motion to discuss and approve that new amount for
Yes.
line item transfers?
Yep.
Okay, I think Fillmore
Second.
Fillmore moved, Justin seconded it, and so let's have some discussion on this item.
Okay, so I can start it.
Yeah.
In your packet, you have a summary of the line item transfers. If you'd like, I can try to share the file if you want me to pull it up on the screen. Otherwise, I
I
can
have it.
just, you all have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know with everybody, but I have it, yeah.
Okay, so there's various items in here. The first one, the animal control officer, there was a salary shortage for some overtime. The old part-time person now became the animal control officer, so she is not only doing her full-time job, but she's on call for a minimum of 8 hours per week. So Jack did find some funds in his dispatch wages to line item transfer funds over for that. The beach and rec, you can see the big item was 67,000 where we moved money over from, most of it came from the security line item where we're not paying that outside service anymore. And we increased our wages supervision, which would just be staff, you know, at the gates and on the grounds. I could let Peggy talk about the 2,400 that's right above that item, as well as the 2,900 that we modified the total by. Peggy or Scott, I'm not sure who's gonna.
Sorry, I got dropped here for a minute.
Oh,
I froze and disconnected.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the beach and rec, the 2,400 and the 2,900 for the wages?
Sure. Basically, you know, since this crisis has started, we've seen a huge increase in activity at Hammonasset, which has spilled over to creating a lot of activity along our roads and our beaches. And so through an executive order I implemented in May, this restricted access to our beaches on the weekends. And so that required us to put staffing at the gates in May, which we normally never do. So in May, we had added staffing for the weekends. Going forward, starting this Saturday, we'll be going to full staffing at the beaches. But, you know, as part of the budget discussion, we had decided to eliminate staffing on Mondays and Tuesdays at those gates because, you know, traditionally in the past, those are slow days. You're not really making any revenue from out-of-town visitors. But unfortunately, I think the whole COVID situation has just made our beaches busy every day. Hammonasset is, you know, traditionally would close its gates sometimes, not that often, usually just like July 4th weekend on a Saturday or Sunday. Now they're closing on a Tuesday, and then they're closing on a Thursday, multiple times on a Friday. And then all those people do is put in, they turn around and put in GPS to find out where the nearest beach is. So what I'd like to do for the end of this year, we have money within the budget, is to add back gate guards for Monday and Tuesday, as well as lifeguards, because I think the view from the Board of Selectmen, and I think also the Board of Finance, just during a lot of our discussions, was to have consistency in staffing. To have a gate guard there, but not staff lifeguards might add confusion to the public. And so we're going to add back the Monday, Tuesday into the schedule so that we have 7-day week coverage at the gates and on the beaches for lifeguards. There's been a steady drumbeat of complaints about, you know, parking lots filling up with out-of-towners, and that's happened on a Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Friday. You know, while we're in this kind of state of emergency, people are, and while Hammonasset is going to continue to keep capacity and parking down, we're going to continue to see this problem at our beaches. So this is just to cover us through the end of the fiscal year, and we had money in the budget. I think it'd be worth having a discussion in July about, because we would like to continue. I know it was eliminated as part of the budget discussion in March, but I think we might want to reinstate that Monday, Tuesday funding for the rest of the summer. So that's kind of where the beach and rec numbers come from. And Scott, I know you've got some other things I think as well in there, because this last budget didn't have any lifeguards at all, right? For the end of this fiscal year.
Correct.
Right. And so we're implementing lifeguards, even if you don't do Monday and Tuesdays, we still had it planned for 5 days a week starting June 20th, which is when we go to a normal schedule. So.
Correct. Yes.
So is that $67,000 line? That's for lifeguards and gate guards just through the end of June?
Yes, without the Monday, Tuesday coverage once school gets out, which is this coming week, we were going to be starting our 7-day operation. So it includes all the coverage shortfall from last season to this season with wage increases and starting earlier as far as watching over everything due to school being technically in session but out because everybody was down there. So we've been watching the facility since Memorial Weekend.
Because remember that the budget, this is last year's budget, right? And so there was no lifeguards budgeted for, there was no beach director, supervisor. So basically what was approved for this coming budget that starts in July, that model is being applied now in June and creeped into May because of COVID. So just keep that in mind. So the other thing is that we saved money because we're not doing the water we're not doing the security company, and that was part of the budget. So there was some savings there too.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So this is, this is a line item transfer. I don't know if you have is this enough to cover it, or was there also an appropriation for additional funds? Or
Everything was covered through a line item transfer.
just by,
Yeah,
so this, I, just to, so I'm clear, this is now for the balance of this month, this is 7-day coverage for guards and gate and life, or, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we'll, I guess we'll have to pick up if that continues into,
For
next
July
fiscal
1,
year.
July 1 on, yes.
But this is, okay.
So we can expect a number, maybe even twice this amount for July and August.
no, July and August, because like I said, this 67 includes so many different adjustments from a budget from last year, because remember last summer was the crazy summer with the new beach pass system. So there was a lot of different things that happened with security and everything else. So this summer, if we add gate guards and lifeguards to those 2 extra days, it would be $22,000 and 439 cents, or no, $22,439. So that would cover Mondays and Tuesdays for July and August.
That makes more sense. Okay.
And how many gate guards are at each post?
Right now we run 2 at each for backup.
Just
And-
so
and
you
you-
know, I believe this would bring us, I mean, when we're talking about next year, it's not only July and August, it would also be next June, the beginning
Yeah,
of
right. Yeah,
our following.
May and
season.
June, yes.
Yeah, and just one other clarification, we did actually budget for lifeguards, right, Scott? It
Correct.
wasn't the full 7 days, we just didn't
Right. We did 5.
hire
We
them.
did it for 5.
We couldn't find any, but the budget did have at a lower rate, a small amount for lifeguards, just to
Yeah,
clarify.
I was just curious, I know it's tough finding workers at all. Were you able to find for this summer? How did you, how was it?
Luckily, we've been very fortunate. David Mendonça, the waterfront director, reached out to colleges, swim teams and everything. So we were able to fully staff.
Get what you need, great.
Yep.
I think Hammonasset actually doesn't have lifeguards on Monday and Tuesday either. They haven't for a few years. Is that still right? That's correct?
I'm not sure with that, Justin. I know they haven't started guarding yet
Okay,
due to the pandemic, but we're starting this weekend.
yeah.
We've been training since Memorial Day, getting the guards used to the 2 beaches, familiarization, and working together as a team. So.
I think Scott, you guys did a great job getting this teed up very early. And I remember there was a lot of questions. Do we even do applications? I think Hammonasset will be adding lifeguards, but luckily we snagged people before them this year, which is nice.
And they
So-
still have, it's my understanding they aren't staffing until they can get all the guards that they've hired, trained. So,
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe looking ahead to next June or next season, maybe we don't need to appropriate for 7 days then, because hopefully maybe this will settle back down, who knows,
okay, I'll look into that crystal ball.
no, well, exactly. Nobody knows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And this is when we talk about next year, it's starting in like mid-June though, right? It's not including May. It's not including, it's a kind of a normal budgeted
Right.
number for next
Right.
year.
yeah, and end of May on the weekends, similar to in the past,
Mhm.
until normal school gets out.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other discussion?
Just one question, under the police department,
Yeah.
since, including 5,000 for COVID, are we going to include that in the money we asked for so that's on top of the 140?
Correct.
Okay.
So what are these? Because if only 25 is COVID, is this, I mean, it's like a big number. Is there something, I know Chief had to leave, but is there any background on this, or is this kind of normal year-end reconciliation?
Unfortunately, it is normal year end, but every year there's a different story. And It's too bad Jack's not here to discuss it, but I can tell you the overtime replacement is the bulk of this line item transfer, and that's because we had some vacancies in officers that Jack had to fill with overtime amount. Now we're paying at time and a half versus a regular salary. So what he did is those savings and wages for those vacancies, he moved that money over to the overtime replacement. There's a few different overtime accounts, but the bulk of it is that overtime replacement account where he
Okay.
had to fill shifts.
Yeah, that
or,
was my main question, since this is my first year. We don't see this, but this is kind of like what normally happens at the
It
end of
is,
the
and-
fiscal year.
My recollection, what Stacy was saying about the story changes. My recollection for a couple of years, there was like a lot of overtime because we had what I thought was an unusual amount of police officers who were breaking limbs and having surgeries on their knees. And so he had to fill in with overtime for other people. So
Yeah,
it
but-
does
so,
seem like this
listen,
comes up every year. Something like this comes up every year, yes.
But by some miracle,
more
he's
room-
able to find it elsewhere, I guess. I mean, I don't know, that's,
Well, we had the savings because we did have people leave that we didn't have to
yeah,
pay.
right.
The wages line, so it's just moving it from one account to another to pay for that time, the officer's time.
But he didn't have any real appropriations elsewhere that I'm
If
forgetting.
if I can add,
It's with a,
if I can add, John, Jack has done an amazing job. He's added shifts to the beach area. And the guys have been great conversing with the public and really showing a presence down at our 3 beaches. And I just think he really stepped up and put the community first and has helped us tremendously with the backflow from Hammonasset closing thus far. So I just wanted to point that out. He took some of his money and put it to good use.
I think Jack's doing a great job. I think you get an uptick in activity in the spring and summer, as I'm sure everybody knows, and I mean activity, and even more so this year. He's taking it from the accounts because he had people, and it happens, police officers get hurt, so you have to pay them time and a half, and then your wages account, you don't use that money, so it's moving it over. It's all within the PD. More than okay with this.
Yeah, this is something that we do every year, just the juggling and rebalancing.
Yeah, that's what happens.
The other question I had was about the finance department. The additional monies, the 19,000
Yep.
to the defined contribution plan pension. Are those what's underlying that?
So we had some retirements that happened well after the budget was developed. So in part of that retirement was health insurance that we were required to pay for these retirees. So this was a surprise. It was not budgeted for, so we had to find the funds for that. We found the funds in the defined contribution pension line item because when we budget the DC plan, we budget based on everybody who is eligible to contribute will contribute 100% of their eligibility, and we will match 100%. Not everybody takes advantage of that, but we budget based on the worst case scenario that everybody will take advantage of that. That's why there were funds available in the DC pension contribution line.
Gotcha, good. All right.
What about the wages from those people who retired? Would that not come into play, or they were?
This is just the health insurance that we paid them after they retired. So there was an arrangement after they retired that we would pay for their health insurance. As far as the wage savings, that was all built in as far as rehiring for those positions.
Oh, yeah, right, because you got to,
Yeah.
you replaced them.
Plus when they retired, there's usually a severance payout as well. So we wouldn't really see a savings right away.
Right.
But going forward in future budgets, hopefully when we replace those individuals, it's at a lower rate than someone who's been here for many
Right.
years.
Great.
Any other discussion? All right, so let's take the vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. No opposition, that motion passes. All right. Justin, you're gonna have to read the next one while I find the agenda again.
Number 14, well, discuss, yeah, line item trans number 14, update on projected year-end fund balance and cost savings for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, and 14A, or do I read that separate? Also liaison reports.
That'll be
14A
separate.
is separate.
Separate, okay.
Yeah, so I sent you all a projected fund balance. I'm gonna pull it, I'm gonna try to share it on the screen now in case you all don't have it in front of you. That didn't work. Hang on.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
Oh,
it did. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. So this is the same format that you're used to seeing. Hang on, let me move it over so I'm not. So it's the same format you used to see.
No, you just screwed it up.
Yeah, now we don't see it.
Okay,
All
forget
right. Yep, all right.
it. Actually, I can look at it this way. So this shows, the special appropriations. It also includes the 140. I was being hopeful for the COVID expenditures that you all would approve that today. And then it shows our estimated or projected revenue over what we budgeted, as well as our projected under expenditures. So we're looking at a projected unassigned fund balance for the end of this upcoming fiscal year of about $16 million, which is at 19% of our operating expenditures. If we take that, when we set the mill rate for this upcoming fiscal year, we use 673,000, so that would have to come out of that. We take off the 10% Board of Finance regulation, we're at about 7 million right now. I'm very conservative when I do these projections. However, it's still very early. We keep the books open through July 31st. Things trickle in through the end of July, so I'll continue to update you, but this is where we are right now. If you go back up to the middle where I talk about the projected expenditures under budget, the Board of Ed is really just a swag right now. That 350, I threw that in based on history. So I'll definitely give you a much better estimate next month. And then the 500,000, those are various town departments. That includes any savings that we had in various departments due to closure. It also includes savings for snow removal in Public Works. We had a pretty warm winter. It also includes, let's see, miscellaneous. I have a list here in front of me. I could certainly send it to you. But it's pretty much all the departments added up and coming up with an estimate of 500,000. Again, this number can change and I'll continue to update you. But at this point in time, this is my best projection. Do you have any questions or want any more details?
I think this looks very good. We're in good shape here. Thank you for your good diligence. I'm looking down at the bottom of the page where you looking at the recommended what is GFOA, by the way?
Governmental Finance Officers Association. It's nationwide, including Canada. But that's pretty much, guidelines that we follow
And
in the municipal finance world.
And where they're looking for 2 months, which is more than our 10%. And we've talked about this a time or two in the past few months about if we adhered to the guidelines and and sequestered 2 months worth, then that's 13 million out of the 16. But we talked maybe about going halfway, picking up, say, 12%, which would use 10 million of the 16. So maybe in the next few months, we might want to think about that, about whether we should do that.
So Fillmore, I know you too well, and I knew this was going to come up tonight. And I did work on a rough draft of a new regulation to modify not only that percentage as well as adding some enhancements to the current policy. So I'm going to bring it up very quickly. And then I'll email it all out to you. You guys can pick it apart. Let me know what you think. I did modify it to 12%. I added some other items in there. It's a little bit meatier than our old regulation, but I did. I know you've been asking for us to move forward on this, so I didn't want you to think that I was just pushing it aside. So I do have that. I'm going to try to share it. So hang on.
Sorry, we can't really do anything. We don't want to do anything without Jean and Ken, because this is a major discussion.
Yeah, so you know what I'll do, because it is all words anyway.
Just email it to us.
I don't think a picture is gonna really help us, but I will forward it to you all, and please give me your comments. Let me know what you think. There's a lot of new information in the regulation. I went from 1 page to, I think, 3 pages. So there's a lot more definitions and municipal GFOA terms in there. So I will definitely forward it to you, but I know that, this is something we've been discussing and want to move forward with.
Mhm.
I'll send it out right after the meeting.
Yeah, thank you for sending that out to us.
So does that mean that we could spend anything over the 12% number every year?
I'm sorry?
No, no. Okay, so any other questions on this projected fund balance?
If I could just make a comment, kind of a half funny one, but I think, with now that the year is almost wrapped up, I think it's worth noting that, with the work of Stacy and her team and Madison having a long history of prudence, we fared pretty well. And while it's not a contest, I found myself, doing this during this pandemic with so many big things going on, I found myself kind of tracking what was happening in Guilford. And they, to which Jean told me I need to get a new hobby. So thank you very little, but it's worth noting that while certainly Guilford is very sound as well, they're right around a 10% fund balance, and you could kind of hear in their deliberations that really kind of hamstrung them a little bit. And given our cushion, I think went a long way to allowing us to offer the residents of Madison a flat tax bill. So I don't think, that's worth noting that, great job to Stacy and everyone there in the finance office.
Yeah, good points.
Absolutely. Okay, then if there's no further discussion on that, then we'll go on to 14A, which is liaison reports. And I think Fillmore, you had some perhaps library and other liaison reports.
Yes, thank you. And this will be brief, but the library, library's actually had 2 board meetings since our last our regular Board of Finance meeting. It's worth noting that they did put in and receive on the federal PPP plan. They got 117 grand from the feds for hiring, bringing personnel, keeping personnel on the payroll, and all that sort of thing. And they have the feeling that they will get the whole thing forgiven, that they've done all the T crossing and I dottings that will allow that to be turned from a loan into a grant in due course. So that's good news. Also on the money side, as of a month ago, their capital campaign, they are still getting money in, and they were 200 grand short of the capital, but that was better than the grand a few months ago. And then 2 other just of interest notes, the July 1st, the building will be available. Unfortunately, nobody can go in it with all that's going on. They'll be doing what I'm calling curbside arrangement. You call and we can bring a book out to here, however it wants to work. And the Interstate Library Association, however it's titled, is back up and running so that they can get books from other libraries did in the old days. So again, it's a virtual curbside kind of. Then finally, their book sale has been postponed until November. Moving on to the pension committee, several things of interest to the Board of Finance. I believe that the pensions are now assuming interest, earnings of either 7 or 7.25, something like that %, and which is a little bit optimistic in these times. And their advisors are recommending that it be lowered to 6 3/4. The pension review committee is not going to bring that forward yet because we're still swallowing that big nut of having the longer than everybody was, that we saw during our budget hearings back in the spring. So once we've swallowed that nut, they may come forward and suggest that we lower our earnings estimates to 6 3/4, which would mean putting more money into it.
Fillmore, can I ask you a question? If they go to 6 1/4, do they have any sense of how much more they'll be looking from us to?
No, I didn't get a feel for
that.
that. It's 6 3/4. If I misspoke, dropping it from. What are they now, Stacy? Is it now? Now
7.
Yeah.
7.
Okay. And they're saying drop it in a couple of 1/8% steps down to 6 3/4. But do that in the future. And I don't think they gave a number because it's going to be whatever the actuary says it is. Depends on who's still alive. They do it in a couple of years. So this is just a heads up for the future. But as an aside, we might consider, we spoke about this past before, that if in another year we still have a very healthy fund balance, it wouldn't hurt to make a special appropriation of $500,000 or something into the pension fund. It's a one-shot deal, and that would get us back at 6 3/4 or 7%. Pretty good in these days and times. Okay, second item, the fire department is going to be asking Peggy, I'm sure Al will speak to you about this if he hasn't already, that the fire department would like to see their annuity increased from the $5,000 a year. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the town and the police pensions are like the typical defined benefit pension that you might have been used to in the corporate world, where it's based on your salary and how long you've worked for XYZ company. The fire department is not that way, since they're a volunteer and don't get paid. Theirs is set up so that after you have served, I think it's 20 years, something like that, then you're entitled to a $5,000 a year annuity. And they're suggesting that $5,000 number has been around for decades, and it's time to bump that up. So Peggy, you may be hearing about that at some point in the future.
I've already had the request made. And I will say I was surprised to see that there's, I think it dates back to the early 90s, that it was a fixed amount. There's no COLA adjustment or anything to it. So I think it's worthy of discussion for sure.
Is that both Nomad and Hose One?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just for the numbers with the new actuary or the latest actuary accounts, the town's pension is sitting at 67.6%, the police at 71.3%, and the fire at 82.6%. So at least on the town side, it's looking a little bit on the lean, and that's again because of this latest change in the actuarial calculations that was made. So that's all I had.
And I know that actuarial discussion, Stacy's done work on all that too, because we talked about that in this last budget cycle. So I think it's important to address it again when we go through the budget this year for sure.
Yes. Thank you for those heads up, Fillmore. Those are really important. Thank you. Ooh. Okay. Then any other liaison reports? Justin or John?
No, thanks.
Okay.
Do you want me to weigh in now? I just wanted to bring one item up real quickly. Downtown Center project, which I'm sure is a favorite amongst first selectmen in the Madison's history. You know, I would like probably in your July meeting to come forward and just brief the board. We talked about it at the Board of Selectmen meeting. We're still kind of working away at some of these easements that are outstanding. And we're getting some stronger estimates on what it would cost to kind of complete phase one. And I think this is going to be a bigger discussion about how we want to, what we want to go forward with. Part of it will be part of CIP. It would have to go into CIP to complete phase two. And then phase one, which is including taking down the telephone poles, hooking up all the businesses, and completing some infrastructure work. You know, we're still looking at something in the, you know, possibly like $300,000 range that we would need to fund. The town would need to fund to complete it. So, we're still refining some of those numbers and trying to resolve some of the legal issues, the technical things with Eversource. But I would like to at one point, and I had intended to talk to Jean about this week a little bit more to get her thoughts about how we might tackle this. And then also Fillmore, I think Lauren was reaching out to you and Tom Banish, and I thought the three of us could have a discussion and get, because you guys have a lot of the previous history and relationships with some of the people that we're dealing with. And I know I would benefit from getting your perspective on that, because this is obviously a challenging three-way negotiation process that we're going through right now. So that'll be on your agenda probably in July, so I can give you a more full briefing. And there are like 2 slides that I used in my Select Women's update. If you're curious as to what some of the costing came out at, there's a little bit of a summary of that in the minutes from our last meeting at the Board of Selectmen level. So, okay.
You're muted, June.
Is there anything else that you have to comment on, Peggy? Is that your report tonight? Good.
No, just echoing everybody. I think we're very fortunate to be in the situation that we are right now, that we can still continue to fund things and provide good services to the community and actually have some savings from the end of this year to work with. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any citizens' comments?
Gus Horvath has his hand raised. I will promote him to talk. Gus, when you're ready, you can unmute.
I saw you laughing, Phil. Yes, a couple of things, just for clarification, for things that are unusual and you don't hear about very often. as Colleen mentioned about the suspense list for taxes, and she indicated the majority of them are based on motor vehicle that have not been paid. And how that happens is the grand list is made up on October 1st. So if somebody moves out of town and they do not report it to motor vehicle or to the town itself, their car may be on the tax list, the grand list on October 1st, but if they move out before June or July when the tax bill goes out, they're not going to pay the taxes because they've never received the bill because they're no longer in town. And really, the only way we ever recover any money on that is if somebody moves out of state and 5, 6, 7 years later, they move back into Connecticut and they go to re-register their vehicle in Connecticut. That suspense list turns up at the motor vehicle office and it tells the clerk there that there are taxes due and they will not issue a registration. So once in a blue moon, we'll get a few bucks back because somebody's moved back to Connecticut. The other thing is, I've been on the Bauer Trust advisory committee from day one, and we were not aware of all of the things that were going on with the trust funding itself. And there was nothing wrong that was going on, but what was happening is the Internal Revenue Service requires that a trust distribute 5% of their value once a year, and that's a minimum. If you do not distribute 5%, you're going to pay income tax on the difference between whatever you didn't, what you did not disperse. And over the years, it appears the trust had been paying out sometimes more than the 5%. And what the bank is now trying to do is to recover or pull back, or whatever the proper term would be, that overage that was paid out after a while. So last year, the bank advised the advisory committee to only spend $50,000 and $50,000 again this year and $50,000 again next year. And it would appear then that difference will be resolved, and we will then go back to distributing the typical 5%. So it's a temporary thing over a 3-year period. And just as a point of interest, I mentioned that I was on it since day one. Gloria Thiel, who had an article in The Source last week, has been on it from day one. And she used to do, she and her husband used to literally do things for the Bauer brothers as they aged. They lived right down the street from them. So she had an interest not only in being on the trust, but she was also she and her husband were supporting in doing errands, going shopping and things like that, which did not come out in that article. But the Bauer brothers were offered or were supported quite a bit by Gloria and her husband, who had passed away a while. And she's 98 years old. And last year, she's not as old as you, Phil, but she's 98. And I'm catching up with you now. I turned 90 in January. But that's my 2 cents on that. And I think as somebody mentioned earlier, the town is very, very fortunate that the folks that have been on the Board of Finance over the years, maybe with an exception or two, Phil, have done a marvelous job. And the town is in very, very good shape. And I've been following the budget in some of the other communities, like in Guilford and Clinton and whatever. And the only way some of them have been able to come up with a zero increase in their mill rate this year is by literally taking millions of dollars out of their cookie jar. Yeah. Come on, Phil. Yeah, there you go.
Fund balance.
Yeah, unassigned fund balance. Used to be undesignated, so I keep going back and forth as to which one it is. But I think our Board of Finance and with the support of the Board of Selectmen have done one hell of a job over the years.
Thank you, Gus.
Yeah, thank you, Gus. Those were great comments, and I echo your thanks to the Board of Finances over the years, leaving this town in the good shape that it's in, and hope that we can continue that tradition. Are there any other comments out there, Lauren?
There are no other public comments.
All right, then I need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
A second?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Jude.
Okay,
Have a
thank you.
pleasant evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.